Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we get to sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players and related music industry experts. If you love playing guitar, stick around. You're in the right place. Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber from Everyone Loves Guitar, and we're going to show the rhythm section some love today. I got Chris Sancho on the call for an interview. Chris is a badass bass player for Ashley McBryde and Haley Witters, and for many other Nashville artists and writers. Ashley's currently tearing it up. They're doing a tour with Chris Stapleton. Her single's about to be, it's on Sirius, I think you said, Chris, right?
Yes, sir.
And it's about to break mainstream radio, and she looks like, you know, one of the next big things in Nashville. Is it fair to say that?
Yeah, man, we'll see what happens. She's definitely got the talent and the team to make a break. So
awesome. Chris graduated from Belmont University with a degree in commercial music. He's toured all over the country. He loves great song. He's opened up for the Brothers Osborne, Thomas Rhett, Big and Rich, the Cadillac 3, Eric Church, and Chris Stapleton, amongst many others. And you want to check him out online. It's Christian Sancho, ChristianSancho.com. And like many people listening to this, he is obsessed with gear. That's a shocker. And I look forward to this call. Chris, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it. It's been tough to get you on the call. I'm glad you have the time now, man. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. How about yourself?
I am doing good. It's sunny, a little hot, but, you know, that's Tampa, Florida. What can you do, right?
Good. Yeah.
Hey, so what are you working on now that you're most excited about? You got a lot of cool things going.
Yeah, the thing that I'm most excited about is definitely this project with Ashley. I'm brand new to this gig. I got it at the beginning of June, and they have since locked me in full-time as the guy. But I'm kind of coming in right at this moment where she's going to get this big push, and you know, a lot of cool things are happening for her, and it's just fun to sit on the sidelines and play great music with the band and kind of watch what is going to happen with her happen. And it's been really cool to watch how people have responded to that and all that good stuff. So it's that's a really exciting project to be a part of. So
very cool. How did you get this gig? That's always a fun story.
Yeah, it's not that interesting, but so I do a lot of, when I'm in town, I'll play in a lot of churches, and I play in a church out in Lebanon, Tennessee, which is about 30 minutes east of downtown Nashville. And for some reason, this little church has a bunch of touring musicians there. And so I played there one morning with Josh Turner's guitar player, John Shaw, and we kind of hit it off and just started hanging out, and I would run into him every now and then, and he is really good buddies with the guitar player in Ashley's band, Andrew Sovine, and so Ashley got rid of their bass player, and they auditioned 4 people. And I happened to be one of those 4 people because John recommended me to Andrew for an audition for the gig. And so went in, did the whole audition thing, and then they spec'd me on a few gigs just to make sure that I was going to be a good hang and, you know, I was going to travel well and all that stuff. And then when we did a gig in Colorado probably a week and a half ago where they locked me in and asked me to be a part of the band full time. So
that's awesome. You know, man, there's I have this saying that you can't connect the dots moving forward, but you said it was not an interesting story, but I find it fascinating because, okay, so let's look at this. Number one, you had to be at that church at that particular time to meet John, right?
Yes.
And by the way, I cannot tell you how many artists I've interviewed that have locked down really good gigs from a church contact.
Oh yeah, it's a real thing.
It's
so
prolific, man. I don't. I would get religion if I moved to Nashville.
Yeah.
Because that's the networking spot.
Yeah, it is. It's just for some reason there just seems to be a lot of great players playing in these churches because most of the time, your bus rolls in Sunday morning, so a lot of the touring guys will end up playing in church, and churches pay here, so it's just an opportunity to make a little extra money on a Sunday morning playing music. So
very cool. So you had to be at the church. You had to happen to run into John. That's Josh Turner's guitarist, right?
Yes.
He happened to know Andrew. They happened to be ejecting their bass player. I mean, that's the universe serendipity for you, man. That was awesome. I think that's a very cool story.
Yeah, it is. When you look back, it's kind of cool because had I not met John Shaw, this would not be a thing for me right now. So
yeah, I mean, there's a million. I always find it fascinating. If you would have made a left turn and said, "Man, I'm just too tired to do this gig today. I want to." Go get something to eat or whatever, a million other things could have happened. And I'm always fascinated by how things line up. Let me ask you this. They hire you and then they're like, you have those 2 or 3 gigs where you're hired, but you're still sort of under the microscope. Is that gotta be nerve wracking? No?
Yeah, it is. And it's funny. First gig that I played with them was at a festival in Chicago towards the end of June, and Ashley's kind of got a lot of love within the industry, so a lot of artists love her, and so there's always people coming up to her. But as I'm getting on stage to play this first set, I look over to side stage and Miranda Lambert and her whole entourage is hanging out watching it. And so it was just first show jitters to the maximum.
Yeah, that's not too much pressure.
Yeah. So it was pretty funny. But yeah, it is having that over there. You just you kind of just have to not think about it and play the gig is yours at the end of the day and do your thing. So
yeah, but I'd imagine that'd be nerve because you're still forget about the pressure. You kind of, at least me, I would feel like, man, I'm still not in the circle. Yeah. It's like you're renting a space in the circle. So that got to be a lot. I give you credit. That's got to be a lot of pressure, man.
Yeah. It was definitely that first show, especially. It was pretty nerve wracking. So you've only played music. I only had one short rehearsal with them. It's just you're still getting everything under your belt. So it was definitely a mental battle for that first one. So
who has more tattoos, you or Ashley?
Man, I think because mine are so big, Ashley probably has more than me. But my whole arm, I have a full sleeve. So I think in space, I probably have more tattoos, and in sheer number, Ashley probably has more tattoos.
Well, thank you for quantifying that. That's funny, man, because I'm looking at her and I saw you.
Yeah.
That's a tattooed up band.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, so where are you originally from, Chris, and where'd you grow up?
I'm from Wisconsin originally, Milwaukee area, so... Yeah, I grew up there and moved down to Nashville when I was 18. So
specifically to go to Belmont?
Yes, specifically to go to Belmont, and with the intention of staying down here or moving to LA when I graduated. Wow,
that's awesome. What kind of childhood did you have up in Milwaukee?
Man, I had your pretty stereotypical suburban childhood. I grew up in public school and lived in a decent house and never had to want for anything coming up. So I was pretty fortunate, and my parents are great. So They've always been super supportive. My dad plays music as well, so they've always been super supportive. I've never been like having to fight them on any decisions I've made or anything like that. So it was a great environment to grow up in, and they kind of always just encouraged me to do what I wanted to do. So
that's awesome. That's great. Good to hear that, man.
Yeah.
So I assume your earliest exposure to music in general then probably came from your dad?
Yes, that would be correct.
What do you remember about it? And, how did that go from you heard something on the radio or in his car to you're a professional bass player now? How did that?
Yeah. Man, like I'd always see him because like really early on I didn't really have too much of an interest in music, but like we would go to his shows. He always played in cover bands around the area and did that. But man, right when I got to around like I think age 10, I just started taking an interest in it, and like I would love some of the songs that I'd see him play, and so I just started asking questions, and eventually it just sort of turned into a thing where I would, he would start showing me some things, and I would just start playing one of his basses. And I grew up in church, so I started playing in church and just kind of gradually just immersed myself in the music world. Did like jazz band in school and all of that stuff. So it was kind of a really gradual thing for me. So,
but you started as a bass player.
Yes, I did.
That's rare, isn't it? Most guys sort of start on guitar and then move over to bass.
Yeah, it's kind of, it really depends. I think a lot of the guys that I come into contact with, they have started on bass, and that's kind of been their thing. I feel like guys who were in bands in high school had more of that kind of path. They maybe played a different instrument and then were asked to play bass, but that was kind of not my thing. And then I think a lot of the guys that I know, I can't even think of one guy who started playing guitar and then switched over to bass, like that I regularly call for subbing gigs or whatnot. So I think that most of the guys that I know have been bass players from the word go.
What so who were like your bigger influences musically as you were growing up, and has that changed today, or are these people still your influences?
That's a good question. Growing up, I was really into jazz and like jazz fusion. So like my influences in that world were like, I loved Adam Nitti, and guys like Victor Wooten and Jockey Pastorius, and I listened to some crazy outside music, Herbie Hancock, and like all of that sort of stuff. Charles Mingus was a big one for me, so I kind of ate that stuff up as a kid, and it's funny now because I don't identify with any of it. So, like Adam Nitty's a dear friend of mine, and like I'll still go and see him whenever he plays in town. But as far as like me turning on like jazz for pleasure, it's a very rare thing these days. And it used to be all that I listened to. Like, would not turn on the radio, would not listen to anything commercial at all. And that really sort of changed when I moved to Nashville. And started kind of doing the thing and playing songs and figuring out what it was going to take to make a living in this industry. And being in Nashville, that meant playing country music. So kind of morphed into that world. And I had a really great mentor back in Wisconsin who had done the Nashville thing and was really savvy about the scene. So it turned me on to a lot of guys. And so now it kind of looks like Pino Palladino is one of my favorite bass players ever. Guys like Willie Weeks, James Jamerson, Sean Hurley, who's an LA guy who played with John Mayer for a while and has played on like every pop record out there, singer-songwriter thing. And then like the Nashville guys, Michael Rhodes, Jimmy Lee Sloas, kind of the guys who are doing the Nashville thing, playing on records and just doing that.
So this is like a very big mix. Let me just go over some of these names because some of them I actually recognize. Pino Palladino, he's played with Jeff Beck.
Yeah, that I'm not sure about.
Yeah.
John Mayer for sure. D'Angelo. He's done like all the neo soul stuff. John Legend, he's on his new record. So a bunch of stuff. He probably has done Jeff Beck, but I just can't confirm that off the top of my head.
Victor Wooten, that name is familiar. Who has he played with?
Man, he played with Bela Fleck and the Flecktones for a long time. I think he still does when they still tour, but I don't know how much touring those guys are doing this year. And Bela Fleck is an incredible banjo player.
Oh yeah,
just stretched the limits. Yeah, so now he's had a really insane solo career. He's like, the technician master and does all that crazy slap stuff and can, just do some really, really whacked out stuff on bass. So
who does Adam Nitty? Who does he play with?
Man, he also a solo artist. He toured with Stephen Curtis Chapman in the CCM world for a really, really long time. He will, last year he subbed for Carrie Underwood for a week while their bass player was out having a baby. And then he'll sub in with Kenny Loggins every now and then. He doesn't have a gig right now, but his solo material is pretty unreal as far as a bass player goes. I think for me, just one of the best bass players in the world as far as his technique goes and how fast he can play and how musical he is, and some of the stuff that he can execute is just unreal.
I'm gonna have to check him out because he sounds interesting.
Yeah.
You grew up real immersed. It's really interesting. I give you credit because that is a very difficult, from a musician's standpoint, that's a difficult niche, man. I mean, it's jazz fusion stuff is incredibly intricate. It's very layered. It's you can get away with being an average technician in rock and blues, but you cannot get away with being an average technician in jazz or fusion, especially fusion. I mean, it's just both of them actually. I mean, it's just you got to have chops there, or you're not playing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that dude, I moved down to Nashville, and I just realized it was one of those things, it just wasn't connecting for me. I could kind of play a little bit of jazz, but I just needed to go and play songs for a while, and I started doing that, and I just kind of never came back to the jazz thing after I started playing songs. So it never lined up for me. It was just never meant to be one of those guys. So
I'm assuming, and this isn't a slam against country or pop, but I'm assuming growing up in the jazz fusion world and then transitioning to pop/country, that technically it was almost a relief, no? It's not as technically complicated as jazz fusion.
Yeah,
Nothing
a little.
is.
Yeah, no. There's definitely an art to learning commercial music, though. That's not. It looks a little different than the jazz fusion thing. I still ton of homework has to be done, and you're working on a different set of skills. When I'm playing country, it's all about being able to play with a click and being perfect in that regard, and working on your time and that sort of stuff. And you end up, at least I have ended up spending much more time on just pocket, groove, and time, and recording myself and watching back to see where I'm falling with the grid, and kind of gaining an ability to move where I put my notes on the beat, and that sort of thing, as opposed to trying to learn, technical things like tapping and sweeping and slapping and, all of that crazy stuff. So it's just, I've started focusing heavily on just a different skill set. So
yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It is a different skill set, and it's not easy, but it's totally different. I see exactly what you're saying there.
Yeah.
When you're do you still practice?
I do. I try to. I haven't ever since I've been in the Ashley gig. I separate practicing and learning songs are two different things. So I don't quantify learning songs as practicing. So
that's a strict standard, my man.
Yeah. So it's unless I'm sitting down to learn a song that's going to translate into working on something like my time, or working on a specific groove that I'll then pull from that song and then go and start to drill it with a click, or do some different exercises that I do to really lock in a feel and whatnot. I really don't quantify learning songs as practicing. So
interesting. When you do practice, what percentage, there's three kinds of practices. There's a practice like, I'm a hobbyist, but like last night I sat down to play and I was like, holy shit, what's going on here? Like, where is this coming from? You have that kind of practice, which you don't have enough of those. Like, it was like, wow, I'm banging this stuff out that I was struggling with maybe somewhat just yesterday.
Yeah.
Then you have, the average practice where, you put your time in and you feel good. And then you have the practice where, like, absolutely nothing works. Like a scale, you'll screw up a scale. What percentage of the time do you have each of those practices?
Man, it's funny. I feel like it's a pretty good split, but I think that each of those different practice levels are important for the real world. They're all applicable, because when you're playing live, especially as much as I do, you're going to have nights where you're really in it. You're ripping stuff that you wouldn't normally play, and it's working and everything. And then, like, some nights you're just going to revert back to record mode, and you're just going to play what's on the record. You're not going to go for anything. And then some nights you can't find it when you're playing live. And I think when you're practicing, each one of those is important, because you can figure out how to treat them in the practice shed, because it's going to happen to you when you're playing live. So I think they're all important.
Man, that is the most mature, like, responsible, practical answer I've ever had to that question. That's awesome, because it's true when you think about it. You're right, because you're going to have all those. And so being able to adjust in every situation is very important when you're playing live like you are.
Yeah. And I think, like, it's super important for me. I'll tape a lot of the performances that I play, and look back, and I don't find the ones that I tape that I nail very interesting. I find the ones where I'm having an off night very interesting to go and watch back to figure out and try and diagnose the problem. I'm all about diagnosing problems in my playing to make myself a better player. I think when you're practicing and you're just not having a good day, I think it's super important just to keep pushing forward and try and still get the most out of the time, because when you play live, you're going to hit a night where it's just not happening. But especially doing this professionally, you're still expected to nail it. Even when you're not having a good night and you just can't get in it, you're still expected to nail it.
So that is a very, super mature, advanced attitude. Is that something that, and I think it's a tremendous way to approach what you're doing and be better at it, whether it's playing guitar or, writing ad copy or running a business, whatever. I think that's a very mature thing to look at your, I don't say failures, your shortcomings, and what what do you need to do to touch up on that so that they're not shortcomings in the normal performance? Is that something you came up with, or was that good habits drilled in you by teachers in the past?
Man, I think it's probably a combination of both. Just as I've gotten older and done this more, it's just sort of developed, and I've always been like a critic. I'm really hard on myself. Nothing is ever good enough, which is a fault in and of itself. But
it's a blessing and a curse. I wouldn't say it's a fault. I'd say it's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah. So, so it's kind of always that striving. I've always had that striving to get better and reach the new level. And, what can I do to minimize, even if I'm having a bad night, what can I do to still play a perfect show so that I'm not going to drop any clams on stage? Or if I do, it's that I just don't execute a fill well, as opposed to totally fall off the map and just start dropping wrong notes everywhere, just like try and minimize the mistakes that I make and make them so it's not so much as it's just hitting the wrong notes, but something just might not roll off the fingers as well that night, or whatever. But at my core, like, the song is still there and I can nail the song every night. And play it correctly. That's kind of where that whole thing came from. So
I think that's awesome, and congratulations. That's a real good thing to have, real good habit, and behavioral habit to have. I think it'd be a fantastic, only serve you well. When you are on stage, are you in more communication with the drummer? Because you two are the rhythm section and you got to lock the groove down, or do you also are you in equal communication with, let's say, Ashley or the guitar player?
Man, it really depends. Definitely, I am more in tune with what the drums are doing. Just because I speak that language a little bit more, I speak more rhythmic language than I do melodic, chordal language and soloing language. That is kind of out of my knowledge, and I'm not really a soloist by any means. I can kind of do a groove solo if I have to, but I really just hate bass solos. But that being said, I know when a guitar player is good or bad, and if they're good, really the only thing I'm paying attention to that they're doing is the space they're filling, so I make sure I'm not stepping on their feet.
Wow.
As opposed to a drummer, I'll be listening to where are they placing their kicks. Does this particular drummer, do they sit a little bit on top of the beat? Do they sit right on the beat, or do they sit behind the beat? And just more, I'm kind of more in tune with what they're doing. Because as a bass player, playing live, coming out through those big PAs, if you're not connecting with the kick drum, if say you're playing with a drummer who lays it back, and you're not putting it there with him and you're putting it a little on top, it sounds muddy going through a PA when you do that. So my job is to adjust to the drummer and the feel and tone that they're setting and to play with them. So I do end up listening to a drummer more than Ashley or the guitar player, or a rhythm guitar is another one that I'll listen to a lot, a strong rhythm player, because they, especially in the studio, they're really going to set the tone as to how the feel and where you should be putting your kicks, and a rhythm guitar player's right hand and whatnot. So, but yeah, I will, especially when I'm on gigs with in-ear monitors and I know the songs really well, I really won't have much lead vocal in my ears. I'll have just enough to hear it if something starts to go off kilter. And I'll pan my guitars hard left and hard right, and they're also really down, but I'll have bass and kick coming right up the middle. So I know that where it is, and just so I can hear that and where they're putting it and whatnot. So,
thanks. That was really interesting. Is it safe to say, or is it if you in a band situation? I know you're new in this band, but if you and the drummer have like is an off stage relationship, like if you have genuine camaraderie with that person, does that translate to a stronger rhythm section on stage? Like I'm trying to figure out, music's a vibe, and your relationships are a vibe, and I'm trying to understand or figure out, do those two intersect, or like can you basically it doesn't matter as long as you're clicking on stage?
Yeah, man, it's funny, like the Ashley thing is definitely like the people that are in that band is because she wants them there and she respects them as people and likes them, and I personally think that translates into a better product, because I've seen, I've opened up for guys where I've been on stage and it just kind of looks like a factory does. You have the artist and then you have the musicians just regurgitating the record behind it, and they're kind of, there's not much identity to it. It is very much so all about the artist, and and like that's cool, but like Ashley's thing, like there's an immense amount of respect for everybody in the band and what they do. And for me personally, I think if you have strong relationships with people, it just translates into a better product anyway, because you respect them as people, and it's hard to do something that's so
emotionally
connected and creative with somebody that you dislike,
that you don't connect emotionally with. That's what I was trying to figure out. Because this is playing music's a very emotional thing, and I was trying to figure out the dynamics of that, because I have a hard time working with somebody even, in a partnership situation if there's no connection, but there's no emotions about work comparatively to the way there is with playing music. So I was trying to figure out if that same thing holds. I know you're a gearhead, so let's talk about your basses. How many basses do you have?
I'm sitting on 5 right now. I just
my man.
I shipped out one yesterday, but I have a new Fender coming in August, so I'll have 6 is when I get it kind of locked in. So
there you go, man. What was your first bass you got? If you
my
remember.
first bass that I bought, because I played my dad's for years, and then I think the first bass that I got was a Ken Smith design jazz bass 4-string. So and then I kind of I got a Music Man 5-string, I got a 6-string at some point, but now I'm back. I pretty much play 4 strings with flat wound strings on them, and you could not pay me to touch a 5-string anymore. Like I found my home on a 4-string P bass, and that's kind of where I've been ever since.
Awesome.
Ever since I found it. So that being said, I do have I have a 1966 Gibson EB2 that I just bought a couple of weeks ago. That's been awesome. I have a Lakeland. It's got what's called a Dark Star in it. They're really famous for being in the Guild Starfires, and they're really hard to pick up to track down. And it's just basically a giant humbucker. And then I have 3 P basses that are all set up for really specific different things. So,
what do you mean when you say P basses?
Precision basses.
Okay, Fender Precision. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. And so they're set up. What are the differences in how they're set up?
Because I don't play 5-string, and there's a lot of low notes that come out of Nashville that go below a low E string, I will tune my basses down. So traditionally, I have one set up down a minor 3rd, and then I have one down. So that's like C sharp, F sharp, B, E. And then I'll have one down a whole step, which is D, G, C, F. It's pretty common. Just think like drop D, but drop the whole instrument down.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have one in standard tuning, and then I have one in standard tuning with flats on it. So
wow. So you take all of those basses on the road with you if you're playing those songs that want, merit those tunings?
Yeah, so like I usually travel with 2 basses. So
okay.
The equivalent, I usually take one in either half step down and standard tuning, or like if I'm playing like a more pop country or bro country gig, I'll probably have a bass that's down a whole step and then a minor third. Okay. So I usually have 2 out. And like with Ashley, I'm using one that's in standard tuning and one that's down a whole step. So, but I could get away with learning it all in drop D, but I'm just lazy. So,
what? Okay, so talk about pedals.
Pedals, yes.
Yeah, I know nothing about. I've never played bass. Talk about pedals for the bass guitar player. What are the common pedals? What are your favorite pedals? Do pedals work the same? Not like electronically do they work the same, but what do bass players typically use pedals for that might be different than what guitarists use pedals for?
Yeah, man. So I have my pedal board sitting in front of me right now, actually. So I have the standard like tuner TU3, and then I have an octave pedal, and the octave pedal that I have is a 3-leaf. It's called an Octave Mini, and it's modeled after the Boss OC2. Mm-hmm. And what you can do with that is that pedal is essentially for copying like synth bass sounds. So you can get some really cool tones out of it that. They're kind of like that big 808 sort of, how I usually run mine is I have it so it takes the lower, the original octave out, because the Boss OC2 only does octave down. So I'll take the original octave out, and so you just have a really synthy lower octave thinking, okay, or lower octave sound. So I use that whenever like I'm playing a pop tune and I need to cop kind of a synth bass feel, because I don't play keyboard bass. It's kind of on my list of things to adventure into when I can.
Keyboard bass.
So like a lot of the pop sounds you'll see, to replicate them, guys will be playing keyboard bass, and that is essentially like think like a Moog or a sound, just a thing with a bunch of knobs, and it's designed to get some of those synth sounds that you're hearing on a lot of records out of LA. I'm having trouble coming up with a tune to check out that's got it on there right now, but it's just that very like kind of rap, like Roland 808, just that big fat low octave sound, that gets people moving in clubs. So so that's like great. And then there's specific key bass stations that you can buy to replicate that sound, as opposed to just throwing it in a track. But I one, don't do a lot of pop gigs, and 2, you can get pretty close with the octave pedal. So I just kind of go that route whenever something like that comes up. And then I have a Tech21 Vt Bass, and all that essentially is an Ampeg modeler. So it'll cycle through like an old B15 sound, which is like the classic recording bass amp. You can get like a 70s stack, and then you can get some like really aggressive overdriven SVT type sounds from it. So I run mine like in between the 70s stack and the B15 setting on the pedal, and just kind of have a little bit of EQ on it, but it's essentially it's an always on pedal for me, and it I think it makes the bass cut a little more out front. Like a lot of guys, it's a favorite in the studio in Nashville. So I just kind of got it, checked it out, and have really enjoyed it. So,
do you see most bass players in most situations headed towards modeling the same way it is for guitarists?
I think so. I mean, like I have most of them will be like the guys on live gigs. They'll be running through a DI and straight into front of house, which is what's happening. The amp modeling thing isn't as big in bass world as it is in guitar world. But like because I just will run in through a really expensive tube DI, and that's usually, bass players most of the time they're taking a line out of their bass heads anyway when they're playing live. So I have just added something in there that's not an afterthought on the amp, and it's a piece of studio DI. So I'll use one of those when I have to go direct. I still like to play with an amp when I can, but the reality is, especially on bigger tours, they're just going away. So I found something that sounds great, and I don't need an amp behind me. So
awesome.
Yeah, and then go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say. So you got your Octave Mini, your Tech21. What's another favorite pedal of yours that you typically use?
I have a dirt pedal, just kind of a light distortion. It's a dark glass vintage microtubes. I'm not sure how I feel on it. I like it for what it does. It's just kind of noisy, and I've kind of been on the lookout for something that has a lower noise floor than that one does. And then I have a compressor on my board. I run the Cali 76. Just compression.
Is that the same as for guitar? Like it improves sustain?
Yeah, and it just it evens out the instrument because bass is it's the single note thing, so it just kind of evens it out, especially when you're playing live and you might have to be performing and you're not paying as much of attention to things like attack and how hard you're hitting the strings. So like it'll level it out and just kind of compress it, and I kind of have like a light medium compression setting on it, and improves sustain and does all that stuff. So yeah, it's pretty great, and that's what I run. I would like to get a fuzz at some point, and maybe just like a total like a synth pedal, just kind of like a weird oddball pedal. But yeah, it's not super complex for me. So
when would you use a fuzz in country, or would that be for non?
Man, it's one of those things that it's good to hear or good to have, because there might be like 1 or 2 gigs a year where you use it and really want it. It's definitely one of those things that's like a once or twice a year situation where you're going to be using it. But
I love it, man. Spoken like a true gearhead. Yeah. Like once or twice a year, but it's important to have.
Yeah. So
that's awesome.
I don't have one yet, but hopefully soon I'll go and start trying to track one down. So
very cool, man. Hey, let me ask you some personal questions. We'll go inside the music studio if you're good with that. So, you're by nature, are you shy or outgoing?
Man, I think I'm really kind of a shy person, but I think because of the nature of this business, it's forced me to come outside of my box and forced me to become social and do things that I really don't enjoy doing, or things like that, like going out and kind of mingling with people and meeting random people and striking up conversations with random people. I've had to learn how to do that and enjoy it and not make it seem like I'm hating my life. So
that's a tough thing to do if you're inherently shy. What either skill sets or what did you talk to yourself to get you to get you to overcome, to help you to overcome that, and just get out there and do it?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I knew I wasn't going to work if I didn't do some of these things. So that's paying the bills is always a good motivator.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So, but besides that, I just kind of learned how to communicate with people, and I figured out that, you know, if you just ask somebody else about themselves, you know, what does everybody love talking about? That's themselves. So if you ask questions about what people do, and, you know, like, you can talk to them for an hour.
Right.
You know, so I've just gotten really good at asking people questions about themselves. And you know, like, I'm just like a music nerd, so I know a lot about drums. I know a lot about guitar gear. You know, so I can have a coherent conversation with a guitar player about the equipment and the amps and the stuff that he is using, or I can have a conversation with drummers about, you know, what size drums they're using, what kind of cymbals they're using, you know, what they're doing, how they're tuning their drums, stuff like that. So I've just made an effort to learn about other instruments and what they do, and then I can just go and start asking people those kinds of questions, you know, and then after the initial, like, doing that, a relationship kind of starts to develop if you start running into people, and, you know, you just get to know them and ask how they've been doing and that sort of thing. So,
well, man, my hat's off to you, because, I mean, just in this call, and like, you and I have never even spoke before, you've been totally open and transparent and, like, super informative, and I really appreciate that, especially in light of the fact that that's not your nature. I really appreciate. Well, no, because I know. Listen, man, this takes effort. You know, like everything else you do. It's know, it's not like. Is it less effort than going to the gym? Yeah, but it's an hour out of your life, and, you know, I appreciate that you're, you know, giving 100% during that hour. So, especially, like, in light of the fact that you are naturally shy. So, man, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who's the most important person in your life? Or who has been the biggest influence to you so far?
Man, there's a couple of people. I had, like, my family is a given, but, like, outside of my family, I've been fortunate to have some really great mentors in my life. One of those was a guy in Wisconsin, Don Trampy is his name. And when I kind of moved down to Nashville, I really had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know anything about country music, country radio, how to play songs, like, nothing. And he just kind of took me under his wing. He was in a cover band up in Wisconsin. You know, he let me sub in a couple of times and get a feel for playing with the band, and, you know, really was a great mentor to me on, you know, this is what you need to focus on in your playing, and this is, you know, these are the trees you kind of need to bark up, and really, like, a lot of what I do now is because I met him in Wisconsin, and, you know, he was able to help me avoid a lot of mistakes and learn how to become a better player and learn what playing bass in Nashville is really all about. So he's been a super in my life.
I apologize.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I apologize. You broke up there, and I couldn't tell if you were talking or not. Do you still get to talk with him? Do you still check in with Don periodically?
Yeah, actually, he's going back to school right now. So I actually just recently subbed a gig for him in his cover band that he is in. So I still chat with him. Like, I still, you know, make an effort to keep in touch with those kinds of people in my life, because he's a really great dude and he's helped me a ton. So
that's nice, man. That's a good story. So your family, and then Don would be the guy that was the biggest influence on you. You single or married?
Yeah.
Hey,
I'm single. I have a girlfriend, but yeah.
Okay. You hesitated there. I wasn't really sure if I shouldn't have asked that question, if I get you in trouble.
No, you're totally good.
Well, I'm married, but really single, sort of married.
Yeah. No, I have a girlfriend, so that's, you know, that's great. So, but yeah, just not married yet. So
good, man. Any hobbies or interests outside of music, or I know your time is probably limited.
Yeah, I'm totally good, man. I love gardening. So I have a garden, a vegetable garden, and kind of do that. And it's therapeutic. And it's my first year doing it. So I kind of overplanted and things are dying this year, but it's great and I love it. And, I can't wait to do it next year and plan a little bit better and that sort of thing. So
that's awesome, man. Very cool. I think it's important that you have a release from what you do 24/7. It's good that and your release is not just mental, but it's physical as well, which is even better.
Yeah, that's great. So,
what's the favorite place you've traveled so far?
Favorite place that I've traveled, man, I love going out west. Anywhere out west, really. So like Arizona is beautiful. I was just out there. I was just playing in Colorado, which is probably one of my favorite places.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. So I'm stoked. At the end of this month, I'm going to Washington State and Oregon, which I've never been before. So I'm super, super stoked about that. So. And I love mountains. I love just kind of the vibe of the West and that whole thing. So those are some of my favorite places. I haven't done much international touring or traveling yet, but I've been told it's coming. So
I'm with you. I think the Pacific Northwest is absolutely gorgeous. I was in Washington State and Oregon. My family and I, we drove from like Boise, Idaho up to Seattle.
Yeah.
And it's like probably the best trip we ever had. It's just breathtaking up there, man, how beautiful everything is.
Yeah, I'm stoked. We're doing that too. We're flying into Boise and then driving to Oregon and then up to Seattle for some shows. So,
dude, when you go drive into Seattle, I've been I'm originally from New York City, but I've been in Florida since '89. It is unreal. It's like you're going down and down and down, and it like just doesn't end. And you see these mountains coming up around you, and coming from Florida where everything is flat, it was just breathtaking, man, watching that. And it's interesting in Oregon. They I don't know if it's still this way. When you go pump your gas, they have to have someone do it for you when you fill up.
Yeah, legal to pump your own gas. I've heard that before.
It's wild. This guy comes over. I'm like, can I help you? And he goes, no, can I help you? I said, so he explained it to me. That was interesting, man.
Yeah, it's super interesting.
What's the favorite part of what you do and the least favorite part of what you do?
Favorite part of what I do, man, I think the favorite part and the least favorite part are two in the same. The traveling is my favorite part, but at times it is also my least favorite part. So, I absolutely love doing the traveling and getting to see new places and whatnot. But there are times, especially if you've been out for a while or you're doing a lot of night drives, and I haven't done any bus stuff yet. So it can get very exhausting. And you're kind of at wit's end. You're in an enclosed place with lots of people, which is also why it's important to like the people that you're around, because you're going to be on top of them and it's going to be uncomfortable. So, at times. So, there are just times where you get worn down and it gets exhausting and you just kind of want to sleep in your own bed and whatnot. But, then you get home and it's like, all right, I'm ready to go again. So.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, without exception, when I ask touring musicians that question, literally 100% of the people have the same answer that you just gave.
Yeah.
So it's the traveling. They said, I like getting there. I don't like going there.
Yeah.
I like landing in Dallas, Fort Worth. I don't like flying on the plane from Nashville to Dallas, Fort Worth. Something along those lines. So
yeah, exactly.
Hey, I'm going to ask you one more question. I'm going to let you go. Any cool or goofy or just like, funny road stories?
Yeah. Man, there's a lot. A lot of them are just debaucherous, but
you can tell one of those is with like discretion, I guess.
Yeah. I think I have one that's like a good story, and that's not like shocking and horrifying. I was playing with Haley Witters, and there's this little. Everybody in Nashville has played this club before. It's called the Crazy Bull in Macon, Georgia. And it's your typical kind of country college honky tonk bar. Mm-hmm. So it gets quite full in there every night and whatnot. We were playing on a slow night because it was during the summer. College was out of session. But playing our set, the end of the set, somebody walks up to give Haley $100 to sing along to a song. So she's like, yeah, $100, sure. Come up on stage. So she brings her group of friends. It's like the 10 females up on stage. They're singing along to this song. So all of a sudden, I just see another girl kind of wander up on stage, and she just starting shit with these other girls. And so Haley's kind of gently trying to herd them, this girl who's starting shit off stage, and along with two of the other females from the group. And then all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose, and she just starts pushing and shoving and all of this stuff. And all of a sudden, before I know it, there is a 15-person female brawl breaking out on stage while we're playing. And it was like a scene out of a movie, man. It wasn't like, it wasn't just like pushing and shoving. We're talking like on the ground. Flying, hair flying, earrings being ripped out, jewelry going like it is. Wow. It is throwdown on stage. So I'm like in the middle of it, trying to get because it started on my corner of the stage. So I'm like handing basses back to the drummer to make sure they don't get fallen on, and it's crazy. And like security, it had to be like 5 minutes before security gets on stage, and then like. They're on stage and they can't get control of these girls, and all of a sudden I see a girl on top of a security guard just beating the daylights out of them.
Holy shit.
And yeah, like it turned into something, man. And finally, like there's another 10 guys up on stage just like restraining these females and like pulling them off stage one by one, and it was a scene, man, and we're just like standing on stage in shock. We're just like, what happened?
Next time Haley would be like, hey, listen, you need to add a little more than $100. You want to get up here?
yeah, absolutely. But
holy crap.
Yeah, because usually like guy fights, they're over pretty quick, but this just went on and on and on, and it just was pretty entertaining. And the best part was it was our last song of the night too. So
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How do you? Yeah. Wow, that's like top 10 things I don't expect to happen.
Yeah.
Number one,
exactly.
A bunch of women come up and start beating the shit out of each other. Wow.
Yep.
That is wild. Interesting, man.
Yeah. It was pretty funny, and we're like, because we were just like so ready to get home. It was a dead night. Like, she's never gone over well there. Her music just is kind of a different vibe than what that club sort of draws. So we were just like ready to be done, and then all of a sudden, like out of left field, like we have a brawl on stage. So
wow, that was totally nuts, man.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that. You didn't disappoint.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
hey, Chris, I can't thank you enough for your time. You've been awesome. I've really found this very interesting. I just want to remind everybody, check Christian Sancho out on Ashley McBryde's tour. She's a really dynamic, up-and-coming artist, as is Christian. And go to his webpage. It's christiansancho.com, ChristianSancho. If you are a woman and you want fighting lessons, he can entertain that as well, apparently. In addition to bass lessons and tracks from the road and all that good stuff. Check out his website. And Chris, man, anything else you want to promote or talk about?
Yeah, man, you can just, in addition to the website, you can come and find me on Facebook and Instagram. My Facebook is Christian Michael Sancho, and then my Instagram is Christian_Sancho.
Awesome. Thank you. Hey, man, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Hey, thanks very much for listening. You can sign up to get notified of future episodes on our website at everyonelovesguitar.com. Now go play your guitar and have fun. Till next time, I'm out. Peace. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.